And welcome into Senior Living Live. My name is Melissa. We appreciate you watching, and we are so glad you could share your afternoon with us. We hope at the end of our conversation, you learn a little bit more about the differences between independent living and assisted living. That is our topic here today. And it is a question we get a lot when someone has an interest in moving into a senior living community. Now, we have an excellent expert here to help you decide which one might be right for you. Her name is Brook Figueras. She has over 20 years of experience on this very topic, and she is looking forward to taking your questions at the end of her presentation here today. Now, to do that, it's really easy. You can scroll down to the bottom of your screen where it says Q&A. You can type your questions out there, and I will be happy to read those to Brook at the end of her webinar. And for everybody here, just to let you know, all audio and video lines will be muted throughout the webinar. Brook, it is so good to see you here with us today. The webinar is all yours.
Thank you so much, Melissa. I feel really honored to be able to come and talk with you and everybody here on our webinar here today. Thank you so much for your time. As Melissa mentioned, almost 20 years ago, I started in this industry and have absolutely loved it from the very beginning. Began as a director of activities, moved into move-in coordination to sales, and now I am an associate executive director for one of the Arbor communities, the Arbor at Bridge Mill in Canton, Georgia, and I just love it. So I am really excited to be able to talk more with you today about navigating your journey through senior living. So why don't we go ahead and get started? As mentioned, my name is Brook Figueras. So I know we'll have questions at the end if you have any. So a lot of it is all in preparing your itinerary. We're going to go on a little bit of a journey here, an aging journey, so to speak. And so I want you to think about taking time out to really think about your plan. What does that entail? What legal documents might be needed? Knowing your budget, being aware of any potential signs of bad weather, so to speak, making course corrections by consulting with an elder care attorney, choosing a destination. That'll be one of the biggest things that we discuss today. So really, what's the difference between independent living and assisted living? We'll dive into that. And this is all in helping you to know how to have a successful journey through the aging process. So things you want to consider. What happens if a storm comes up? Most people spend more time planning a trip for a vacation than they do their senior years. Of course, planning a vacation is so much more fun, but similarly, there are things to consider, decisions that need to be made as you're planning your senior journey. And the sooner you plan, the more options you'll have. There are things you want to consider, the decisions to be made, or where do you want to live? Who will be there to help be alongside you to provide that extra help? Since we're all living longer, we all need more care, and about 75% of us will need to look into some kind of long-term care during our lives. And are you prepared for those storms ahead? Are there other benefits available to you that you want to consider? So things you want to be able to think about, or do you want to stay in your home? Will you need to downsize to maybe live in a more social community? Do you plan to move in with your kids? Like, what are the differences that you want to be able to address? And then who has legal authority to assist you along the way? And ultimately, what can you afford? So in preparing that journey, it requires a lot less preparation than a vacation, so to speak. Aging is going to happen, whether we're prepared or not. So you don't need a ticket or a passport or excursion vouchers or any other kind of navigational paperwork. However, you probably will need good benefits, a healthy bank account, and some ways to protect your assets and a credit card or two. So you would want to make sure that you consult with an expert on the financial side of things. Talk to an elder care attorney. Make sure that all your legal documents are in order so that you can have this successful journey. And just think about when you are going through this, whether it's for yourself or for a loved one, the senior is the one making the decision, and they're the one navigating their course, going through everything, making sure that the voyage is good, so to speak, but keeping in mind that as the captain of the ship and figuring out where you're going, you're in charge of all your friends and family that are on board as well. So being ahead, thinking ahead for those types of things will make this much smoother for you and help you to avoid those glaciers in the water that you may come across that you aren't really planning, or that rough water ahead. But you want to be able to know what direction to go. Even again, whether it's for yourself or for a loved one, what happens if there's a health decline or a cognitive decline that you're not quite thinking of. So you want to look at all of those different aspects as you're considering your next steps. So sometimes when we least expect it, things don't go as planned. And so you want to make sure you have a backup plan. And this can result in a wide degree of crisis situations. You want your family to have plans to know how to respond quickly. So you don't want to wait for that crisis to happen before you determine how you want to manage it. And so if you have a backup plan to take over when you're no longer making those decisions, or just in that preparation process, you want to know who else can be there to help you with those emergency procedures. Who's that second in command to assist you through everything? And oftentimes there's actually a tool, it's called a file of life, that can help write everything down for you. Again, so you plan ahead before these things occur, then there won't be a question of what your desires are. And you don't really want to wait until a crisis happens before making those life-altering decisions. Because in those crisis situations, you don't really have time to evaluate options. You want to look ahead before all of that occurs. And so we are going to navigate what some of those different options may be for you. The biggest thing is the destination. And with that destination, there are different needs you'll need to consider. So your care needs, your location, and your budget. Those are three of the biggest things to be to consider as you're looking through on what you want to do. And so with that, there are many different categories of cabins, so to speak. So when you're on that ship, which one do you want to be in? Independent living, in-home care, personal care, assisted living, memory care, and skilled nursing. Now, the ones we're going to focus on mostly are going to be independent living and assisted living. And what do those look like? We want to make sure that people have the full knowledge of what those different potentials are for independent living. In an independent environment, you are going to find yourself with other people that are 55 and older. It's designed to be more of a social environment, to be around people of the same age, same likenesses, and most independent senior living communities will provide an apartment, but some have cottages or condominiums or single family homes. Residents who are seniors, they don't require assistance daily, but they will have activities to be able to enjoy and benefit from those convenient services. They're senior friendly surroundings and have increased social opportunities. And in an independent environment, more often than not, you don't really have the healthcare or assistance of those activities of daily living around you, such as medication management or bathing, support with meals and dressing and toileting. Those things are, you're not going to find that in an independent, but an independent living differs from a continuing care community, which offers multiple different levels. So true independent is really just being around other people who are 55 or better, similar likes and needs and desires of just being around others, having that social engagement, but not necessarily needing added support with other things. With assisted living, that's where you're going to have a nurse oversight. True assisted living is regulated by the state. So there are certain qualifications that people have to follow. There are certain state guidelines that people have to undergo, getting physical from the doctor, knowing exactly how somebody is in their overall care needs, supporting with putting together a care plan for them, helping with all of those activities of daily living we mentioned earlier, bathing, dressing, grooming, going to the restroom, medication management, 3 meals a day, snacks to supplement throughout the day, reminders to eat, just making sure that people are getting that support that they need. So in assisted living, people still have their independence. They're able to do on their own many things. They just need that added care throughout the day. And so that's really what we're looking at in the difference there. And then of course, there are the other potential options of in-home care, personal care homes. And so there are different possibilities for people. But again, getting back to the difference between the independent and assisted, independent is truly independent. Just being around others that may have it. And some communities, like what we have at Bridge Mill, do offer the more all-inclusive environment to where you're not really having to worry about as much. All bills included, transportation included, the activities calendar included. So it's more of a carefree, maintenance-free environment. And then with assisted living does not mean that a person loses his or her independence. They're just getting that added care. So I do want to make sure that I'm clear on what the differences on those are, and we can address more specifically if y'all have questions later on that. Forgive me. So as I mentioned, the different options there with the independent, assisted, we talked about a personal care home as well. And then there's memory care. So memory care is a possibility too. Memory care is just a little bit more on the assisted living side, but it's more support for those that may, their cognitive decline is a little bit higher, and they may be a wander risk, or they walk outside, they don't necessarily know how to get back, and so they are needing more support there, and they need to be redirected if they're maybe getting into something that's unsafe, or they need help with meals. So in memory care, it's just a more secured access, a little bit higher level of support in an assisted living type environment. So memory care is just a bit more from that end. So ultimately, with a good navigational plan, you can gallop through your senior years, enjoying time with your friends and family, become familiar with all of the options that you now have so you can get the most out of your journey. So just make sure you are determining which direction you want to go so that you know what location, do you know who with your family you want to be near, that can help you in case you have any choppy waters that you need to get through. They can help navigate through. Have you set aside the money that you're going to need for this trip? Do you know where that is? Is it set up? Asset protection, great thing again to talk to an elder law attorney about. Maintaining your health, what's the best way to be able to do that? And being in an environment, oftentimes even being in an independent living environment, and having that extra social engagement and knowing that meals are included and you have less to have to worry about there, that can help to really increase someone's quality of life and help them to maintain a better healthy lifestyle. But if necessary, getting what they need in assisted living, with people making sure that they're getting their food and making sure that they're getting taken care of with their hygiene every day, and making their medication is being taken care of and managed at an appropriate time frame. But keeping an eye on any any bad weather, so to speak, that you're seeing ahead, and being prepared for that, and make those course corrections as you need. But ultimately, you want to relax and have fun as you are navigating through everything. I really appreciate your time. And if you have any extra questions, let me know. I'm going to pass you over to Melissa. And so over to you.
Yes, great job. Excellent, Brooke. A lot of really good information here. And it's a great warm up at this point for our viewers who are watching right now. Thank you for taking the time to be with us today. We always appreciate you all. To write out your questions. This is a really good time to get your questions asked and answered. You can remain anonymous if you want. Again, the easiest way to do that is to scroll down to the bottom of your screen where it says Q&A. Type out your questions there, and I am happy to read those to Brooke as we try to take this to the top of the hour. We expect that this webinar will last about 45 minutes to 1 hour. Great time to get your questions in. Brooke, that was a good time to take a deep breath. We do have our first question in. This one comes from Kathleen, and I think this is an excellent question, and it gets asked a lot. She asks, can you still be accepted if you wait until you need assisted living? Do you have to start an independent living?
Oh, that is a wonderful question. So the short answer is no, you do not have to start an independent if you do not wish to. You can absolutely wait until you need the assistance before making that transition. What I will say, however, is that through my experience, people tend to make the transition a bit easier when they come into an independent environment, because when they do that, hopefully you're doing, as we've discussed, of planning ahead. But what we find more often than not is that if people wait until they need assisted living, they're often doing it in a moment of crisis. And it's not as much of a choice as it is a necessity. And so people tend to take that a little bit harder. It's not as easy of a transition for them. But by all means, people can wait until they need it. Stay in an independent home, stay in your home as long as you want before you need it. Just knowing that more likely than not, the downsizing aspect is going to feel a little more drastic if you're coming from home into an assisted living apartment versus from home into an independent environment. It just makes those stair steps a little bit shorter. They don't feel as drastic in a change.
Excellent. And I think we have a couple more questions here, but before we get to those, I think this is actually a really good time to point out maybe what senior living was like 20, 30 years ago, because a lot of people have in their mind what it used to be as opposed to what it is now, because they haven't maybe been on tours. So they have an idea of what it was, which is different from what it is now. Can you explain that aspect, Brooke, and then what it means to age in place?
Absolutely. So roughly 20 years ago, when I first started, I can tell you my experience in an assisted living in a retirement community was more of an all-in-one style. It had more of an institutional feel. People came in, they were all mixed together. So people who needed a little bit of extra help didn't really feel comfortable living on their own anymore, but were still fairly independent, to those that needed the help with activities of daily living, the bathing, dressing, grooming, medication management, and then those that had memory issues, that had that cognitive decline. Everybody was in together and everybody ate at the exact same time, and the meals were all the exact same, and there was no variation, and people were kind of forced through the day-to-day routine without any real choices there. It was just make sure that people are getting what they need to eat, they're getting their medication, maybe a few activities here and there, but to be perfectly honest, there wasn't a lot of freedoms there. And so it's very, very different. Whereas today, we have a full gamut of things. So as we mentioned, there's independent and assisted, but even at Bridge Mill, what we have the standalone cottages. So independent cottages for people to come into. It's truly a home. It's a 2-bedroom, 2-bath house with a 1-car garage. And so that's a much easier transition to go into, to go from a larger house into a smaller one. It's how nice, I don't have to clean as much. There's just not as much to have to worry about. But all utilities and meals and everything are included, so they're not having to worry about those day-to-day items either. And then with independent living, it's an independent apartment. Again, everything's included there, but not having to worry about going outside to come into the main building to enjoy those different activities. So meals included, utilities included, transportation to and from doctor's appointments and grocery stores, whatever people may need there. And then a full engagement calendar to know when they can come and have fun with other people, and know when they can socialize more easily, and when are there going to be more people around that, oh, I love knitting, or I want to do water aerobics, or there's a bean auction today, I want to go see what that's all about. What does that mean? So just being able to do different things, or hey, I hear there's a field trip, they're going out to a vineyard, I want to be a part of that. So being able to have those opportunities in again, whether it's the cottages or the independent apartments. But then there's the assisted living. Assisted living is that extra support every day. People still making their own decisions, and they're able to get around and do things, but they just need someone else to help them out. They need help, standby assistance in the shower, would feel a little more comfortable with somebody in there supporting them. Help to get dressed each day, and don't forget to take my medication. So somebody else overseeing the medication. And if they need some support being redirected, they've got all of that. And there's somebody with constant oversight. So every couple of hours, somebody's putting their eyes on them so that they know they're getting the care that they need. And if they need support, they just have to push a button. So that's our assisted living. And then memory care, that's our fully secured, our most secured access, full support for our residents. Those are the ones that they can't necessarily anticipate their needs. And so we anticipate them for them, and knowing what through their loved ones and their health care, they're letting us know they need help with going to the restroom, or need reminders, you're going to have to assist them to know what's on their plate to eat, or guiding them to come over. So it's knowing all of those different things. That's where a true age and place style community allows you to be in that. You're not losing what's in the community, the culture, the people, that whole feel. You may change where you're laying your head, but you're just getting a little bit of extra support as you go through each part of the community.
Yeah, and that was a really awesome, exhaustive list, but I think it can help answer questions, especially for maybe perhaps the one we saw with Kathleen. Does it have to be independent living? No, you can come, whenever, whenever you feel it is the right time for you. But the good news is, with the way senior living is now, as Brooke explained very well, if you need a little bit of help, or you start to have a little cognitive decline as you're in assisted living, you can stay in the same place with the same people, the same friends, and get that extra support in the memory care wing of the community. And that's what makes senior living nowadays so great. There's so many options. Great job with that, Brooke. Let's continue on. We've got a question here from Robert. What if one spouse needs assisted living, but the other spouse is independent? Another great question.
Yes, it is. So, Robert, to give you as concise of an answer on that for you as possible, it really depends on you and your wife, what support is needed, and then what works best for the two of you. So what I mean by that is, if you were to come in and let's say you started in our independent apartments, you're in a 2-bedroom apartment, and you notice that you're having to supply a little bit more support for her and could use some support. It's for yourself. We have a third-party company that's on site that can come in and provide that care without you having to separate or have to go to an assisted living, or even the other portion of our community if that's your choice. So if you prefer to say, I want to keep my wife with me as long as possible, I just really would feel more comfortable if somebody else assisted her with bathing. I can help with everything else, but I just want somebody else to help with that. Then by all means, we would help get you connected with somebody to get that support in your apartment together in independent living. If, however, you feel that she needs more care and you want it to be more, it's not as easy to anticipate, and so you want it to be more at the push of a button, then we could discuss both of you going to assisted living, and she could be getting the support she needs. You're with her, you don't necessarily need it, but you have that. We also have couples that one person needs more support than the other, and it's actually more of a detriment to the health of the one that's more independent because he can't do it all. And it's very difficult to separate the two. And so therefore we have had some residents that choose to have one stay in independent living while the other goes to assisted living. Then all the physical needs are being taken care of for the one that needs it in assisted living, and the independent living resident is able to just continue to maintain the emotional support and have that go back to being a spouse as opposed to being the caregiver.
Got a couple of questions here from Daniel. We will start with the first one from him. At the Arbors in Canton, yay, your community, Brook, do you provide 3 meals a day if you are in independent living?
Great question. So we provide breakfast and one other large meal a day. Our breakfast is from 7 to 9, and then the other large meal can be taken anytime between 11 and 6. In addition, we also provide a complimentary soup and salad. So technically, we say just 2 with the added soup and salad, but more often than not, we find that is plenty for most of our residents. They just don't eat as much, and people can switch it up. So they can do breakfast at 8 and then have their large meal at lunch and then come down for soup and salad in the evening, or they can do soup and salad at lunch and then come down for their large meal in the evening. So we do provide those meals. The only difference would be on Sundays and holidays, we do strictly breakfast and brunch in independent living.
Great. He's got another question. How big is the cost difference between independent living and assisted living?
Sure, that's a really good question. So on just the basics with our independent apartments, we have both 1 and 2 bedroom floor plans, and then within that we have an array. So we have 4 different 1 bedrooms, 2 different 2 bedrooms, so that is going to vary. If we're strictly talking about our 1 bedrooms, those start at $34.50, but they are all inclusive. So it's the 2 meals, it's housekeeping every other week, it's all utilities, transportation, use of our amenities. So it's all of that together, along with cable. So we do provide high definition cable as well. So $34.50 is where our 1 bedrooms and independent start. And then in assisted living, again, we have the nurse and caregivers that help to oversee the care plans for our residents. And they receive 3 meals a day. We take care of personal laundry and housekeeping every week, the snacks throughout the day, the medication management, and then the support with those activities of daily living. And so those our studios start at $47.75 a month. Now, other things I do want to add in there is that those that have long-term care insurance, that would kick in assisted living or memory care. And then those that are veterans have the opportunity to have VA aid and attendance benefits.
Yeah, and just a quick plug, we do have a couple of webinars on aid and attendance. Emily Schwartz is a guru when it comes to this. We've had quite a few webinars with her. She answers all the questions. She is rapid fire and is very clear and cut and dry when it comes to the questions and answers. You might want to check that out after this webinar wraps up. Let's go back to Kathleen very quickly, just to continue to finish up with her follow-up question. She wants to know now, if one person is in independent living and one is in assisted living, in terms of spouses. Do you pay for two places or one? How does that work, Brooke?
That's a really good question. It would be two separate places. And so again, it just depends on the needs of the person, but the occupying of an apartment in an independent and an apartment in assisted, it would be claiming two different ones.
But you do have the option if someone is, like you mentioned, with the husband who may be more independent than his wife, that somebody can come in and they can continue to live in one apartment together or one home together.
They can. It is through a third party that we would get them connected. So there would be additional costs on that, but even that would just be determined by how much support somebody needs. Just as an example, for our in-house care company, they can do them in 15-minute increments. So you're not bound to 4-hour minimums like most people are if they're trying to get care within their home. So they're able to kind of balance their budget a little bit more easily that way.
I did not know that. That is a great little nugget there. Thank you, Brooke. Lauren wants to know, what are the typical early warning signals regarding when to move from independent living to assisted living?
That's a really good question. So there are a handful of ways that we try to approach things. One of the biggest ones is to know that when somebody lives in an independent environment, especially one that allows for the graduation of support that's needed, the decision to do that is not a forced one. We do not say, okay, that's it, this has occurred, you have to go ahead and do this. And it would have to be something really, really big for that decision to be kind of made for somebody. It's a collaborative effort. And more often than not, it comes in a time that you say, you know what, I'm noticing that I need a little bit more help with these things, or I'm noticing mom needs a little bit more help. And in an independent environment, we're just not able to do as much with somebody. So probably one of the number one reasons that we recommend people to go ahead and make that transition is if there's a potential incontinence need. To be very honest, you can't plan for going to the restroom. You just can't. And so if somebody gets to the point where they're no longer able to care for the hygiene aspect themselves, and they need the support, we're going to be needing to talk about assisted living. Sometimes it's more of a financial aspect, because while you can have the care company come in and provide that added support, even incrementally, sometimes it just adds up to where it's more financially advantageous to make that move to assisted living. So it's one of those that, well, if I'm in independent, I could have somebody come in an hour or so a day to help with these different things, but cost-wise, I'm spending the same and I'm getting help in all areas in assisted living. So again, it is a very collaborative effort of making that decision. It's hard to say absolute one or the other, because we want to empower people to stay independent as long as possible. So we really work with each individual family that way.
And I'm so glad you mentioned that. I mean, of all the seniors I've talked to, there isn't a single one that says, you know what, I want people to help me all the time. No, yeah. Everybody wants to be as independent as they can be for as long as they can be. So yes. Thank you for saying that so much. I think sometimes it gets lost in the mix. We do have a question here about something you mentioned earlier in your presentation. This is from Marie. She says, you mentioned a file of life. Can you tell us where to find that online?
Where to find it online? That's a great question. We actually have forms that we get, that we keep in the office, and we give them to our residents. And it's something that you put, fold it up and stick it on your refrigerator. And it's literally titled File of Life, and it's your emergency contact information. It's most beneficial if you put down your medications as well, and where you want to go in the event of an emergency. So if heaven forbid 911 needs to be called, they know exactly what you want, because they can just grab that information off your fridge. Very genuinely, go to Google and type in File of Life. You'll find those. I could look for a very specific link. I'm more than happy to do that and get back to you. I don't have that specifically right now, but I'm happy to do that research.
Yeah, and we will add a link to that in the chat. So please look for that. Thank you so much for that question. Let's move to a question from Anonymous, and this goes back to costs. What do basic monthly care costs run on average? And this is excluding room, board, and utilities for assisted living. For example, somebody who needs help managing medication or showering.
Great question. So each community is going to be a little different in the way that they do that. So I can genuinely only speak to how we do it here at Bridge Mill. And ours is more of an all-inclusive style. And so what I mean by that is that, yes, we have care plans that we do for each and every individual. We do an assessment and find out exactly what their needs are. And then it's based on a point system. So if we meet with somebody and we talk with them and find out you really just need standby assistance in the shower, they're not needing a lot of support there, they just somebody to be there, because it is taking a caregiver away from another resident to come be there with them, there would be, I believe it's 2 points attributed to that. But if somebody's needing help with bathing from head to toe, then that's going to be 12 points. So they take those points and they do that with each and every activity. So brushing your teeth, helping to transfer from a chair if need be, those types of things. And the accumulation of points will determine the care level. So for us, 0 to 49 points, it's all included. So that 4775 studio that I mentioned, that includes that care level. That includes the care up to all of those different things. If however, somebody assesses at 50 points or above, then it would be an extra $300. So that would help to take care of that extra support that they're needing. There may also be an additional cost for diabetic management. So some of our diabetics are strictly taking a pill form of medication, and they're not having to do the blood draws and the insulin pulls and that type of thing. That's just standard med management, and we don't charge for that. That's included in our pricing. But for diabetic management, that requires the blood draws and the insulin pulls and doing shots and that type of thing, that's going to be $300 a month, because it's much more involved on that one. And so it would be $300 if they're at the higher level of care, $300 for diabetic management. And then we do recommend the alert pendant for people, so if they need that. And so that would be $35 a month. So we try not to make it to where it's too exorbitant. We don't want people to freak out by the added care costs that are going to be in there. We tried very hard to make it as all-inclusive as possible. But other communities do it very different, and they charge by the care need. If somebody needs help in a shower, they need help with medication, they need help with getting dressed, they're going to charge for each of those different care levels. And you're going to see a considerable different range. And so they'll start their base price considerably lower, but then it's, once you get all the things that they include that we do, they're same in line. I hope that makes sense.
I think that's a great system. I think it really beats sort of the every month 25-page long
Yes.
bill that somebody's going to get. At least they know ballpark what this is going to look like, what the cost is going to be, what's included, and then if it goes to the next level, what may be extra. And you said that may change. If we're talking specific Arbor communities, that may change community to community, that $300, Brooke?
Potentially, yes. So because we all do things, it may be a little different from the Arbor communities. The location has something to do with it too. Yeah. Like what are the neighboring communities doing as well? So it just kind of varies with each one.
Gotcha. Great job. So you mentioned that having diabetes might put you in that next range, perhaps. And I want to pick it up there because this is a question from Jessica, and I think this is a great question. Will assisted living do IVs or injection or wound care, quote, skilled nursing? And I guess how does that get included, Brooke?
That is a very good question. So this is very interesting. This is a delicate one, I have to say. So we cannot do IVs. That's considered a skilled care. So if somebody needs something like that, and depending on what it is, I've seen people need IV antibiotics and that type of thing. It really depends on what it is. If they are currently a resident, they're already in with us, then there's a little more grace with the state, because again, assisted living is state regulated, so we have to follow certain guidelines. So I do not want to misspeak. I do want to be very clear on that anytime there's something like this that comes up, I consult with our nurses and figure out what we need to do. But if there's somebody's already a resident and going through that, there is a potential that we could have a partner come in, an in-home nurse, an external in-home nurse that would be able to come in and do something. So they would be doing home health. And so being able to come in and provide that, it would be prescribed by the doctor, they'd get an order and come in and offer that added support. Same thing with physical therapy. We have a physical therapy company that's on site. All of those types of needs would be filed through insurance. So the extra cost that comes in with those would be dependent on the insurance of that individual. Sometimes it does require with IVs that they would say, no, during this period, that's really something that needs to be done in a skilled nursing environment, and we can't do it. So just to know that it would really be dependent on the extent of what somebody's needing, on whether or not we could. And then under state regulations, somebody can't come in having IV fluid needs or something like that. That's not something we could accept in that way. So it would have to be, it's just kind of different. That's definitely more something I'd need to consult with my nurses on.
Yeah, and that sounds like something that is capped by the state or per state. So that could be something where you may have to, unfortunately, Jessica, pick up the phone or wherever you happen to be living and find out what is acceptable when it comes to your senior living communities with the state and what is allowable. But that is an excellent question. And Brooke, good job answering that based on your knowledge of what you do currently at Bridge Mill at your community. This is a follow-up with Jessica as well. If a resident needs to go to the hospital or rehab, will you hold their room for them when they get back, and for how long?
It's a great question. So short answer is yes. Yes, absolutely. So in the same way you have your house, if you have to go to the hospital or a loved one needs to go, the house doesn't go away during that time. They keep that. So it's the same thing. And so we would hold it as long as needed for them. They would still be responsible for the monthly cost though. So whether they're there or not, because again, it's the same thing. When you have a house, you have to go in to a hospital or something, you're still responsible for that.
Right. Yeah. Jessica, if you have any follow-ups, please feel free to send those to us, or Brooke, before we leave today, we'll make sure we put your email out there for everybody. We can maybe get that into the chat box so everybody can have that, and or a telephone number or way to contact you, Brooke, so that if there are any follow-up questions, you've got the right woman who can answer these for you. And if you don't want to, have these answered here, you can also do them a little bit more privately. So Constance wants to know, do you buy or rent independent living / assisted living?
Great question. So in a typical independent and assisted living environment, no, you do not buy into them. They are leasing type communities. And so it's a month-to-month style. You may have a 12-month agreement, but as with us at Bridge Mill, it's a 12-month agreement, but we recognize life happens and you may have a family member that decides to move across the country and you want to follow suit. So we just ask for a 30-day written notice to be able to make that arrangement. Or if there's a transition that needs to be made from independent to assisted, then there's no hold. You just make that transition, and it's the day you move, it stops in independent and goes to assisted living. So you're not being held on both of those. But there there are some that do the buy-in, but they're not as prevalent.
Gotcha. And that goes for the cottages as well.
Correct. We're strictly leasing.
Perfect. Okay. Back to Kathleen. Kathleen, thank you so much for asking your questions. Very smart, intelligent questions from everybody here today. I love it so much. She wants to know, what training do your caregivers have? Are they CNAs or other? And I know we take great pride in our staff and their training, Brooke.
Yes, so we have, that's one of the things I have to say I absolutely love about the Arbor, is that there is regular, continual training for everyone across the board. So whether it's myself as the Associate Executive Director, or our caregivers, or even those that are in dining, we all go through training. And then for those in our care team, they go through more in-depth training, but we all actually get it across the board, and we all have to go through it very, very regularly. So for our care staff, we go through training on cognitive declines or impairments, how to help with people moving, transferring from one area to another, how to even approach our residents and how to talk to them, how to redirect them if something seems to be off. And quite honestly, it works across the board. The training that I go through, even though some of it is more specifically geared toward those that may be dealing with cognitive decline, I got to tell you, it has helped me in my everyday life of just addressing people in general, and more just being aware of how people receive you. So that's a huge part of the training that we do, is making sure that the interactions we have for our residents are very personal, and then again, those constant reminders. So we have the more formal training in that. We do videos, we do in-person training. Everybody has to go through first aid and CPR, and making sure everything is staying current on that. We do fire safety training, and then we have regular meetings. We do monthly meetings with our staff in general on different things that are going on in Arbor, making sure everybody's aware. And then our resident care director, who is our head nurse over assisted living and memory care, she meets with her care staff all the time, and they're talking about different things. So there is, again, continuous ongoing training for our team.
And then those specifically with the skill set to come in, are they CNAs when it comes to the actual physical care?
Oh, yes, sorry. So we have certified nurses assistants, we have med techs, we have our nurse, so we have, and then we have caregivers. So we have each of them for our residents' care.
Perfect. Well, we're going to take this to the top of the hour. We have about 10 minutes left. So this is a really good time to slide in your final questions for Brooke. Great questions so far from everybody. We've got one from Mary here. What happens if I live longer than my financial resources? Mary, that is a fantastic question. And there are quite a few people who are living that right now, who are in their late 90s and wake up every day and are wondering, wow, I'm still here. This is great. But now it's, how much do I need to set aside to continue my care? And that is a concern for people. So Brooke, what happens in that situation?
It is, and that is a very common question, and that's a hard one. To be very, very blunt with you, that's a very difficult one, and why we often recommend making sure you're getting with a financial advisor or an elder law attorney to help protect those assets that you have, to help them, because your financial situation and what you need. They would be able to help you to maximize the support. And what does this look like? How can we project things out and see what that would look like in case of that you can live longer. I had a great aunt that lived 3 weeks before her 107th birthday. So, so I can tell you, we definitely, with the family and trying to figure those things out, it is a very sensitive situation of trying to figure it out. But I would say talking to a financial advisor, an elder law attorney is the best way to go, because in a situation like ours with our community, we are private pay, aside from the long-term care insurance that may be there or the veteran aid and attendance that's available. Otherwise, we are private pay. So wanting to make sure that you have the needs necessary as you're moving forward is just it. I would go to an expert on that advice there.
And the good news is, if you go to www.seniorlivinglive.com, we have quite a few interesting videos on that very topic. Ben Green is a financial advisor. He gave some fantastic advice, some free advice for those who are wondering how to pay for senior living, how much they need. Some great videos to check out there. Also, as we mentioned, aid and attendance, that information for veterans benefits also on there. And we have an elder law attorney who has also answered some of these very questions that Brooke has brought up here today. So we've got you covered here at the Arbor Company, whether you choose us or not. We are here all about news that you can use. And Brooke, you have certainly given us a lot to think about here today. Before we leave, we have Brooke's email in the chat box. Brooke, for those who won't be able to see the chat box, maybe they're watching this on the backside, can you please give that to our viewers?
Absolutely. So my email is Brooke, it's B Figueras. I'm going to spell that out for you because I've got a great fun last name. So it's B as in Brooke, and then F as in Frank, IGUERAS as in Sam, at Arbor Company, fully spelled out.com. So that's my email address, and you are more than welcome to give me a call as well. And you can reach me at 770-691-0022.
Brooke, you did such a wonderful job. We appreciate you sharing that wealth of 20 plus years of knowledge all about senior living.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you. And for our viewers, of course, we appreciate you sharing your time with us and for being a part of the conversation. So many great questions today. Just to let you know, this webinar will be available starting tomorrow. You will receive a link in your email that you could share with your friends and family, whoever you want. And yes, you're welcome, Kathleen. Brooke, she says, thank you. I agree.
Very welcome.
Thank you. And of course, if you like this content, as we have mentioned several times, you can head on over to our website, www.seniorlivinglive.com. We have a video vault full of information all about senior living, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. As always, we appreciate you all watching Senior Living Live. Have a great day, everybody.